The chamber was silent as Ambassador Sarah Chen walked to the center platform. Her footsteps echoed against the crystalline walls of the Grand Council Hall. 2,847 species had representatives in this room. Some floated in special atmosphere bubbles. Others stood on platforms adjusted for their gravity needs. A few existed as pure energy, their forms flickering like contained stars. Sarah had stood in this chamber hundreds of times before. She had mediated disputes between species who had been enemies for millennia. She had helped write treaties that brought peace to entire sectors. She had believed in this place once. She had believed in what it represented. That belief died today. She carried a data crystal in her hand. It contained evidence that had taken her team 3 years to gather. Images of destroyed worlds, testimony from survivors, genetic records of species that no longer existed. All of it pointed to one conclusion that could not be denied. The Krev Dominion was committing genocide. "Honorable Council members," Sarah began. Her voice was steady, though her hands trembled slightly. "I present evidence of systematic extermination. The Krev have destroyed the Pellan homeworld. They have hunted the Mira to extinction. The Vorsh now number less than 10,000 scattered across refugee stations." The holographic display activated above her. Images filled the chamber. A world burning, ships fleeing through space only to be destroyed. Children crying in overcrowded stations, the last of their kind. Sarah continued speaking. She presented every piece of evidence. She called for action. She demanded that the Council enforce its own laws. The charter was clear. Genocide was the highest crime. The punishment was severe. Military intervention, seizure of assets, removal from the Council. When she finished, the chamber remained silent for exactly 30 seconds. Then the debates began. The Krev representative, a towering creature with 6 arms and scales like black metal, rose to speak. "These are lies spread by inferior species. The Pellan world was destroyed by natural disaster. The Mira were a dying race already. The Vorsh attacked our colonies first," more voices joined in. Some supported Sarah's evidence. Most called for further investigation. The Tarn Coalition, the Council's strongest military power, suggested forming a committee to review the matter over the next 5 years. 5 years. Sarah had heard this before. 3 times before, to be exact. 3 times she had presented evidence of Krev crimes. 3 times the Council had voted to condemn strongly and do nothing. The vote came quickly. 2,041 species voted to express deep concern and establish an investigation committee. 806 species voted for immediate action. Humanity's vote was among them. As the result was announced, Sarah felt something break inside her. Not anger, not sadness. Something colder, something final. She reached up and removed the silver pin from her collar. It was the symbol of her position, the mark of Earth's membership in the Galactic Council. For 200 years, humans had worn this symbol with pride. Sarah placed the pin carefully on the chamber floor. The metallic sound of it hitting the crystal surface seemed louder than it should have been. "The United Nations of Earth hereby withdraws from the Galactic Council," she said. Her voice carried clearly through the sudden silence. "For 2 centuries we have tried your way. We have sat in these chambers and begged you to enforce your own laws. We have mediated your disputes. We have stopped your wars. We have believed that reason and evidence could triumph over politics and cowardice." She looked around the chamber, at the species who had become friends, at the ones who had always opposed humanity, at the ones who had hidden behind procedure and bureaucracy while civilizations died. "We were wrong," Sarah continued. "Laws without enforcement are not laws. They are suggestions, polite requests. We are done making requests." A council elder, a being so old that its species name had been forgotten, spoke from its energy field. "Ambassador Chen, this is clearly a negotiating tactic. If you have concerns about the vote, we can discuss amendments to the proposal." Sarah almost laughed. They still did not understand. "This is not a negotiation," she said. "This is notification. Earth's official withdrawal will be processed over the next 30 standard days. All human citizens, merchants, diplomats, and military personnel will be recalled from Council space. All treaties, agreements, and mutual defense pacts are hereby void. All Earth embassies will close. All Council embassies on Earth and human colonies will be asked to leave." The chamber erupted in voices, thousands of species trying to speak at once. Some were angry. Some were confused. Many were laughing. They thought this was theater. a dramatic gesture that would be reversed once Earth got what it wanted. The Krev representative's laugh was loudest of all. The humans are afraid, it said. They realize they are weak. They run home to their small blue world and hide. Sarah turned to look at the Krev. She said nothing. She simply looked at it with eyes that had seen too much injustice. Then she turned and walked out of the chamber. She did not look back. Behind her, the council began to debate. They formed committees to discuss the committees that would examine the implications of Earth's withdrawal. They voted on procedures for handling withdrawal procedures. They did what they always did. They talked. Sarah walked through the corridors of the council station. Other human diplomats joined her. First 1, then 5, then 20. They had been waiting for this moment. They had known it was coming. In the station's main concourse, thousands of humans were already packing. Shop owners closed their businesses. Students gathered their belongings. Scientists backed up their research and prepared to leave. Every human ship in dock was being prepared for departure. The other species watched with growing unease. Humans had been part of the council for 2 centuries. They ran half the station's infrastructure. They operated the translation systems. They maintained the databases. They mediated the disputes that kept the council from tearing itself apart, and now they were leaving. Sarah reached the human diplomatic quarter. Her staff had already packed her office. 2 centuries of treaties, agreements, and carefully built relationships were being loaded into crates. She stood in the empty room and felt the weight of it all. Her second-in-command, James Park, approached. "Admiral Rodriguez wants confirmation," he said. "Are we really doing this?" Sarah nodded. "Send the message. Operation Recall is confirmed. 30 days. James hesitated. "Sarah, once we start this, there's no going back. Earth will be on its own. No allies. No protection from council law." "Council law," Sarah repeated. She looked at the data crystal still in her hand. The evidence that the council had ignored. "Council law protects no one, James. It never did. Send the message." The message went out across all human channels. Every human in council space received the same order. Come home. 30 days. Earth's merchant fleet began converging on human colonies. Passenger ships rerouted to pick up citizens from distant stations. Military vessels took up escort positions. The largest organized evacuation in galactic history began. The Galactic Council watched and did nothing. They still believed humanity would change its mind. They still thought this was negotiation. They formed committees to discuss what concessions might bring Earth back. They did not know that humanity was done talking. They did not know that while they had spent 200 years debating, Earth had spent 200 years preparing. They did not know that the humans who had been the Council's greatest diplomats had not forgotten how to be something else. Warriors, the 30-day countdown began. The merchant ship Prosperity drifted in orbit around the colony world of New Shanghai. Captain Maria Torres watched as the last shuttle lifted off from the surface. 3,000 human colonists were leaving homes they had built over generations. They packed what they could carry and left the rest behind. "That's the last of them, Captain," her first officer reported. "All civilians accounted for," Maria nodded. She had been running freight routes through council space for 20 years. She knew every station, every port, every customs official. Now she was leaving it all behind. "Set course for the extraction point," she ordered. "Earth fleet will escort us from there." Across council space, the same scene repeated thousands of times. Humans left their businesses, their homes, their lives. They did not argue. They did not protest. They simply packed and left. The efficiency shocked the other species. Within 10 days, 70% of humans in council space had already departed. The council station at Meridian Prime had housed 15,000 humans. Diplomats, merchants, scientists, teachers. They ran the translation services that let different species communicate. They maintained the computer systems. They operated the medical facilities that could treat multiple species. They mediated the small disputes that happened every day in a station housing 200 different species. When they left, the station began to fall apart. The Zenthi and the Corvin had been arguing about docking bay assignments for 3 years. Human arbitrators had kept them from violence. On day 12 after the humans left, the Zenthi attacked a Corvin ship. Within hours, both species were fighting in the corridors. Station security tried to stop them. But without human coordination, the security forces could not communicate properly. The Zenthi used sonar. The Corvin used pheromones. The translators had been maintained by humans. The violence spread. On day 15, Ambassador Chen's final message reached every screen in council space. She appeared calm, almost tired, but her words were sharp. "We came to you with open hands," she said. "We offered our services freely. We mediated your disputes. We stopped your wars. We believed in the dream of the Galactic Council, a place where different species could live together peacefully, where justice was blind to the shape of one's body or the chemistry of one's blood." She paused, looking directly at the camera. "We were fools. We wasted 200 years believing that evidence mattered. That truth mattered. That the rules you wrote had meaning. We presented proof of genocide and you formed committees. We showed you murdered children and you debated procedure. We begged you to enforce your own laws and you told us to wait." Her expression hardened. "We are done waiting. We tried your way. We begged you to be better than you are. Now we will handle it our way." The message ended. The Krev Dominion found the message amusing. Their leader, Supreme Commander Vask, gave an interview that was broadcast across the galaxy. "The humans talk tough," he said, his scales gleaming under the lights. "But they are merchants and diplomats. They have no warrior tradition. They have no great fleets. They are weak mammals who fear conflict. Let them run back to their little world. The strong will continue to rule the galaxy." Other aggressive species agreed. Without human mediators, old grudges surfaced. The Zyrath Consortium had always envied their neighbors' resources. The Felon Unity remembered insults from centuries ago. The Dravix clan saw opportunity in chaos. Within 20 days of Earth's withdrawal, 3 new wars began. The Council tried to respond. They called emergency sessions. They wrote resolutions. They debated intervention protocols. But without humans to guide the process, nothing happened. Each species wanted to protect their own interests first. Every proposal got lost in amendments and counter-amendments. The bureaucracy that had frustrated humans for 2 centuries now paralyzed the Council completely. On day 23, the last human ship left Council space. The merchant vessel Last Light crossed into neutral territory, escorted by 30 Earth military ships. As it passed beyond the Council's border, Captain Torres looked back at the space she had called home for 2 decades. "Good luck," she whispered. "You are going to need it." She had no idea how right she was. The exodus was complete. Every human had come home. Earth's population swelled as colonists and merchants returned. The home system was more crowded than it had been in a century, but something was different. The returning humans were not defeated or afraid. They were angry. They had spent decades watching injustice and being told to be patient. They had seen the Council ignore its own laws. They had witnessed genocide and been ordered to form committees. They were done being patient. Admiral James Rodriguez stood in Earth Fleet Command, watching the displays. Every returned ship was being processed. Every citizen was being accounted for. And in the outer system, in the cold darkness beyond Pluto, something else was happening. Ships were gathering. Not the diplomatic vessels that had been humanity's public face for 2 centuries. Not the merchant ships that had carried Earth's goods across the galaxy. These were different ships, darker ships, ships that had been built in secret in hidden shipyards far from the Council's eyes. For 200 years, while humanity talked peace in the Council chambers, they had also prepared for war. Not because they wanted it, because they had studied history. They knew that peaceful species needed to be strong or they would be prey. The Council had seen humanity's diplomatic fleet. Clean white ships designed for show and comfort. The galaxy had assumed that was all Earth had. They were wrong. Rodriguez's second-in-command, Commander Chen, no relation to the ambassador, approached with a report. "Sir, the Ghost Fleet is fully assembled. All 847 vessels are operational. Crews are ready. We are waiting for final authorization." "The list?" Rodriguez asked. "Confirmed. 12 species have committed acts that require intervention. The Krev Dominion is first." Rodriguez nodded slowly. He had fought against this day for his entire career. He had believed in diplomacy. He had trusted the Council to do the right thing. But he had also followed his orders. He had built the fleet. He had trained the crews. He had prepared for the day when talking would not be enough. That day had come. "Send the message to the Security Council," Rodriguez said. "Operation Justice is ready to begin." 6 months had passed since Earth's withdrawal. The Galactic Council had mostly forgotten about humanity. They were too busy with their own problems. Wars were spreading. Disputes were escalating. The careful balance that humans had maintained was gone. The Krev Dominion celebrated its supremacy. Without human interference, they expanded aggressively. They attacked another minor species, the Velen Collective. Their fleets destroyed 3 Velen worlds in a single week. The survivors fled to council stations begging for help. The council debated. They formed committees. They scheduled discussions. They did nothing. On the Krev homeworld, Supreme Commander Vask hosted a celebration. The greatest warriors of the Dominion gathered to honor their victories. Vask gave a speech about the natural order. The strong ruled. The weak perished. That was the way of the universe. The celebration lasted until 3 a.m. station time. At exactly 3:03, every sensor in Krev space went dark. Military sensors, civilian sensors, every detection system simply stopped working. For 3 seconds, the Krev were blind. When the sensors came back online, there were 847 unknown ships in their space. Dark ships, silent ships, ships that had appeared from nowhere. The Krev military scrambled to respond. They demanded identification. They received no answer. They issued warnings. The dark ships ignored them. Supreme Commander Vask was pulled from his bed. He arrived at Command Center in time to see his forces preparing to fire. "Who are they?" he demanded. The sensor operator's voice shook. "Sir, the ship signatures. They match Earth's merchant fleet. But these are not merchant ships. These are warships," Vask laughed. "The humans? They dare to threaten us? Destroy them." The Krev fleet opened fire. The war lasted exactly 48 hours. The first Krev missile salvo never reached its targets. The human ships simply were not where the sensors said they were. The missiles detonated in empty space, their explosions lighting up the void like fireworks. The Krev fired again. Hundreds of missiles and energy beams filled space. They used weapons that had conquered dozens of worlds. Weapons that had destroyed entire fleets. The human ships moved like ghosts. They flickered in and out of sensor range. They appeared in one location and vanished before weapons could lock on. When they did get hit, their shields absorbed damage that should have destroyed them. Then the humans fired back. The Krev had never seen weapons like these. Beams that seemed to pass through shields as if they were not there. Missiles that tracked targets through every evasive maneuver. Projectiles that moved so fast the sensors barely registered them before impact. A Krev battleship, the pride of their fleet, took a hit from a human weapon. The ship's shields held for exactly 2 seconds. Then the beam punched through and cut the battleship in half. The 2 pieces spun away into space, atmosphere venting from the wounds. Supreme Commander Vask watched from the command center on the Krev homeworld. His scales had turned pale, a sign of fear in his species. How is this possible? They are diplomats. They are merchants. His military commander, General Thark, studied the displays with growing horror. "Sir, their tactical coordination is perfect. They move as one organism. And their ships? Every time our sensors lock on, the readings change. It is like they know where we are looking and show us what they want us to see." "Then stop looking," Vask snarled. "Get close to them. Board their ships. We are superior in close combat." The Krev sent boarding parties. Fast attack ships moved in close, using their superior speed. Krev warriors were legendary. They had 6 arms, each capable of wielding weapons. Their scales were tough enough to stop small arms fire. They had conquered species across 3 sectors. The attack ships approached the human vessels. They prepared to dock and breach the hulls. The human ships opened their bay doors. What came out was not what the Krev expected. Marines in powered armor moved through space with precision that seemed impossible. They used weapons that the Krev had never encountered. Plasma that burned at temperatures that melted Krev scales. Railguns that punched through armor like paper. And worse, they fought with a coordination that made the Krev look clumsy. The Krev warriors who entered human ships never came back out. The battle raged for 12 hours. The Krev threw everything they had at the human fleet. They called in reinforcements from every system they controlled. They activated weapons they had been saving for emergencies. They fought with the desperation of species facing extinction. Nothing worked. Human ships moved through Krev space like they owned it. They destroyed military installations with surgical precision. They disabled communication networks. They eliminated weapons platforms. And they did it all while barely taking damage themselves. At hour 18, The Krev command structure realized something terrible. The humans were not trying to win a battle. They were eliminating the Krev military capability completely and permanently. At hour 24, the Krev fleet was reduced to 30% of its original strength. Every major ship had been destroyed or disabled. Every orbital defense platform was gone. Every military station was burning wreckage. The human ships stopped firing. They took up positions around every Krev military installation, around every Krev colony world, around the Krev homeworld itself. Then came the first human communication in 6 months. A woman's face appeared on every screen in Krev space. She was older, with steel gray hair and dark skin. She wore a military uniform with more medals than seemed possible. Her eyes were cold. "I am Admiral Amira Okonkwo of the Earth Defense Fleet," she said. "The Krev Dominion has been found guilty of genocide, crimes against sapient life, and violation of every law that supposedly governs this galaxy. You have murdered billions. You have destroyed worlds. You have hunted species to extinction." She paused, letting her words sink in. "The Galactic Council has proven they will not stop you, so we will. You have 2 choices. Surrender your leadership for trial under Earth law, or we will pass judgment now. You have 1 hour to decide." Supreme Commander Vask's command center erupted in voices. Some wanted to fight to the end. Others begged for surrender. Vask himself sat in silence, staring at the displays that showed human ships surrounding his homeworld. "We are the strong," he said quietly. "We have always been the strong. How did we lose to merchants?" General Thark understood now. "Sir, they were never just merchants. While we saw only their diplomatic face, they were preparing. For 200 years they built these ships. They trained these crews. They planned for this day. We thought they were weak because they chose to talk. We were wrong. They talked because they chose to, not because they had to." 53 minutes into the hour deadline, Vask made his decision. He would not surrender. The Krev would fight to the last warrior. They would show the galaxy that they bowed to no one. He opened communications to deliver his defiance. Admiral Okonkwo's face reappeared. "Your hour is up, Supreme Commander. You have chosen judgment. So be it." The human fleet opened fire. But not on the cities. Not on civilians. They targeted the government complex where Vask and his leadership stood. They targeted the military command centers. They targeted the orbital palaces where Krev nobles lived. The strikes were precise. Impossibly precise. Buildings collapsed in controlled demolitions. One moment they stood. The next moment they were rubble. And in every case only the guilty died. Supreme Commander Vask had time for one final thought before the ceiling fell on him. The humans had shown mercy by making it quick. Across Krev space, the same scene repeated. Every war criminal, every military leader who had ordered genocides, every noble who had profited from conquest, they all fell in the span of 2 hours. The human ships then did something unexpected. They landed on the Krev worlds, but not to conquer. They brought doctors. They brought food. They brought humanitarian aid. Admiral Okonkwo addressed the Krev people. "Your leadership is gone. Your military is destroyed. You have 2 paths forward. You can choose new leaders and live in peace. Or you can choose violence again and we will return. Choose wisely." The surviving Krev watched in shock as human ships departed, leaving behind aid stations and medical supplies. They had expected conquest. They had expected subjugation. Instead, the humans destroyed only those responsible, and then left. In the council chambers, thousands of species watched the recordings of the battle. They saw how easily the Krev had fallen. The Krev who had been considered one of the strongest military powers in the galaxy. The Krev who had defied the council for decades, destroyed in 48 hours, and the humans were not done. Admiral Okonkwo broadcast a message to the entire galaxy. It was short. It was clear. For 200 years we documented every crime the Galactic Council ignored. Every genocide. Every atrocity. Every violation of the laws you claim to uphold. We have a list. The Krev were first. There are 11 more species on that list. She held up a data pad. On it were 11 names. Some species in the council recognized their own names on the list. Others recognized their allies. You have 30 days, Okonkwo continued. 30 days to surrender your war criminals for trial. 30 days to make reparations to your victims. 30 days to prove you can enforce justice yourselves. After 30 days we will come for you just like we came for the Krev. The message ended. Panic spread through council space. The Xyrith Consortium, whose name was second on the list, immediately tried to contact Earth. They sent messages. They sent ambassadors. They sent gifts and offers of alliance. Every attempt was ignored. On Earth, Admiral Rodriguez stood with Admiral Okonkwo, watching the responses pour in. They still think this is negotiation, he said. Okonkwo shook her head. They will learn. The Krev thought we were weak because we talked. These species will learn we talked because we gave them the chance to be better. That chance is over. Now comes justice. The 30-day countdown began. Across council space, 11 species scrambled to save themselves. Some tried to reform quickly. Others prepared for war. A few tried to hide. The humans watched and waited. And in the outer reaches of human space, more ships gathered. Darker ships. Larger ships. Ships that made the Ghost Fleet look small. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when humanity stopped asking and started taking. The Xyrith Consortium was the second name on humanity's list. They had ruled a dozen systems through fear and careful manipulation. On paper, they were a peaceful merchant alliance. In secret, they operated the largest slave trade in the galaxy. The consortium's leadership met an emergency session. Director Venth, a tall insectoid being with compound eyes and precise movements, addressed the Council of Directors. The humans have given us 30 days, Venth said. We must use this time to negotiate. Offer them anything they want. Trade agreements, technology, money. Humans are merchants at heart. Everything has a price, Director Cormath disagreed. The Krev thought the same thing. They died in 2 days. We should surrender immediately. Give them our criminals. Close the slave operations. Show them we will reform. A third director, Shal, spoke up. Or we fight. The humans have one fleet. We have allies. Together, we could match their numbers. The debate raged for hours. In the end, the consortium decided to try everything. They would negotiate. They would also prepare for war. And they would hide their worst crimes. The consortium sent ambassadors to Earth. They never arrived. Human ships intercepted them at the neutral zone and turned them back. No explanation. No negotiation. Just silent rejection. The consortium tried sending messages directly to Earth's government. Every message went unanswered. They offered trade deals worth trillions. They offered technology. They offered to name a planet after Earth's leaders. Nothing worked. 20 days into the countdown, the consortium made a fatal mistake. They tried to hide evidence of their slave operations. They moved slaves from visible locations to secret facilities. They erased databases. They killed witnesses. They did not know that human intelligence services had been monitoring them for decades. Every move they made was recorded. Every crime was documented. On day 29, Director Venth made one final attempt. He recorded a public message broadcast across the galaxy. In it, he apologized for the consortium's actions. He announced the closure of all slave operations. He promised reform. It was a lie. Human reconnaissance showed the slaves had simply been moved, not freed. The operations continued in hidden locations. The apology was theater. On day 30, the human fleet arrived. This time there were no warnings. The Xyrith Consortium had been given their chance. They had chosen deception over truth. Now came judgment. The human ships moved through consortium space like a precision instrument. They went directly to the secret facilities. The ones the consortium thought were hidden, the ones where slaves were kept in conditions that made death seem merciful. Human Marines breached the facilities. They freed the slaves and arrested the operators. Every person who had participated in the slave trade was taken into custody. No exceptions. No mercy. At the consortium's headquarters on their capital world, Director Venth watched his empire collapse in real time. Human ships surrounded the planet. Human troops secured every government building. Within 6 hours, the entire leadership of the consortium was in human custody. The trials began immediately. Not in some distant court. Not after years of appeals. Right there, in the consortium's own capital, humans set up tribunals. They presented evidence. They called witnesses. The slaves testified about their treatment. The records spoke for themselves. The galaxy watched on live broadcast. Humanity showed every crime in detail. The slave markets where families were separated. The breeding programs where children were born into captivity. The torture chambers where resistance was broken. the mass graves where the unprofitable were disposed of. Director Venth tried to claim he was just following tradition, that slavery was accepted in many cultures, that the consortium had operated within legal gray areas. The human judge, a stern woman named Justice Catherine Walsh, cut him off. You sold children. You bred sapient beings like livestock. You tortured them for profit. There is no culture, no tradition, no legal interpretation that makes these acts acceptable. You are guilty. The sentence is death. Venth and 47 other consortium leaders were executed within 24 hours of their conviction. No appeals, no delays. Just swift justice. The freed slaves, numbering nearly 2 million across 12 worlds, were given a choice. They could return to their home worlds, or they could stay and claim the consortium's assets. The most profitable consortium worlds were given directly to the former slaves. The galaxy watched in stunned silence. The Xyrath consortium, which had existed for 3,000 years, was gone in less than a week. And humanity had done it without destroying a single civilian center. They had targeted only the guilty. Back in the council chambers, fear turned to panic. 9 species remained on the list. Some had already begun reforms. The Dravix clans, known for their brutal conquest traditions, surrendered their military leadership voluntarily. They opened their worlds to human inspectors. They released all prisoners of war. They did everything humanity demanded. The humans accepted their surrender. The Dravix were removed from the list. Inspectors arrived to verify compliance, but no fleet came to destroy them. The message was clear. Real reform would be accepted. But others tried to find ways around human justice. The Felon Unity thought they could hide their crimes better than the consortium had. They destroyed evidence of civilian massacres on colony worlds. They blamed their crimes on rogue elements. They claimed they had already punished those responsible. The humans came for them on day 37 after the Krev fell. The pattern repeated. The fleet arrived. The guilty were found, no matter how well hidden. The trials were swift. The punishment was certain. 3 more species fell in the following months. Each time the pattern was the same. The humans knew everything. They had documented every crime. They gave one chance to surrender, and if that chance was rejected or abused, justice came swiftly. The council tried to respond. They called emergency sessions. They debated intervention. Some species wanted to fight humanity. Others wanted to surrender. The arguments grew heated. Twice, fighting broke out in the council chambers themselves. The Tarn Coalition, the council's strongest military power, finally called for unity. We must stand together against this threat, their representative declared. The humans have destroyed 6 species in 4 months. They act as judge, jury, and executioner. They have no authority. They must be stopped. A vote was called. Should the council declare war on humanity? The debate lasted for 3 weeks. In the end, the vote was too close to reach a decision. The council was paralyzed by its own procedures. While they debated, humanity continued its work. 2 more species on the list surrendered and accepted human justice. Their leaders were tried. Some were executed. Others were imprisoned. But the species themselves survived. Their people were given a chance to rebuild without the criminals who had ruled them. Ambassador Sarah Chen, who had walked out of the council chambers 6 months earlier, returned to the station. But not as a diplomat, as an observer. She sat in the public gallery and watched the council tear itself apart. A few council members approached her during breaks. They asked her to intervene, to tell Earth to stop, to negotiate a peaceful solution. Sarah's answer was always the same. We negotiated for 200 years. We presented evidence. We begged you to enforce your own laws. You chose bureaucracy over justice. Now you live with the consequences. The Velen Collective, the species that had nearly been destroyed by the Krev, sent a delegation to Earth. They came not to protest but to thank humanity. Their representative, a small reptilian being named Shala, spoke before the United Nations. You saved us, Shala said, her voice breaking. The council debated while we died. You acted. You gave us justice. You gave us our lives back. Whatever you ask of us, we will provide. Earth Secretary General Marcus Webb responded carefully. We ask nothing except that you build a peaceful future. That you remember what happened. That you never become like those who hurt you. Other species who had been victims of the criminals on humanity's list began sending similar messages. They offered alliance. They offered support. They offered to stand with Earth against the Council. A new power block was forming, not based on military might or economic advantage, based on justice, based on the principle that crimes should have consequences, that laws should be enforced, that the strong should not be allowed to prey on the weak. 3 species remained on humanity's list. The galaxy waited to see what would happen next. Would they surrender? Would they fight? Would the Council finally act? And on Earth, in the quiet offices of Fleet Command, Admiral Rodriguez reviewed the final plans. The 3 remaining species were the hardest. They had stronger militaries. They had more allies. They were preparing for war. Rodriguez looked at his staff, at the officers who had spent their careers preparing for this moment. They will fight, he said. The next phase will not be as easy as the Krev or the Consortium. Are we ready? Commander Chen nodded. Sir, we have been ready for 200 years. Let them come. The galaxy held its breath. The easy targets were done. Now came the real test. Could humanity enforce justice against species that could actually fight back? The Tarn Coalition was the third to last name on humanity's list. They were not slavers like the Consortium. They were not genocidal like the Krev. Their crimes were subtler but no less evil. They had conducted illegal weapons tests on inhabited worlds. They had released bioweapons that killed billions. They had done it all in the name of research and security, and they had the strongest military in Council space. The Tarn had been preparing since the Krev fell. They had studied every human battle. They had analyzed human tactics. They had formed alliances with other species who feared humanity's justice. Together, they assembled a fleet of over 3,000 ships. The largest military force gathered in centuries. The Tarn High Command met to finalize their strategy. General Cross, a massive being with 4 legs and armored skin, addressed the assembled officers. The humans have advantages, Cross admitted. Their stealth technology is superior. Their weapons are advanced. But they have one weakness. They care about honor, about rules, about minimizing civilian casualties. We will use that against them. The Tarn plan was simple. They would position their military assets near civilian centers. They would use their own people as shields. If the humans fired, they would kill civilians. If they did not fire, the Tarn could destroy them. It was a plan that assumed humans would follow the rules of civilized warfare. The Tarn forgot that humanity had stopped following the Council's rules. On day 45 after the Krev fell, the human fleet arrived at the border of Tarn space. But this time something was different. The fleet was larger, much larger. Over 2,000 ships emerged from faster-than-light travel. And these were not the stealth ships that had destroyed the Krev. These were battleships, massive vessels bristling with weapons. Admiral Okonkwo broadcast a message. The Tarn Coalition has committed crimes against sapient life. You have tested biological weapons on civilian populations. You have killed 9 billion beings across 7 worlds. You have 30 minutes to surrender your leadership for trial. This is your only warning. General Cross laughed when he heard the message. 30 minutes? He had prepared for months. He sent his response. We reject your authority. We reject your justice. If you attack, you will kill millions of Tarn civilians. Their blood will be on your hands. We are prepared to defend ourselves. 29 minutes later, the human fleet attacked, but not how the Tarn expected. The human ships did not fire on the military installations near cities. Instead, they fired on something else entirely. Every communication satellite, every sensor network, every data relay. Within 3 minutes, the Tarn military was blind and deaf. Then human Marines teleported directly into Tarn military headquarters. Not dropships, not assault shuttles, direct teleportation into secured facilities. Technology the galaxy had thought impossible. The Tarn guards opened fire. The human Marines' armor absorbed the damage and returned fire with precision. They moved through the headquarters like they had blueprints of every room. Because they did. Human intelligence had infiltrated Tarn systems years ago. General Cross tried to activate the self-destruct sequence for the headquarters. He would rather die than surrender. But his controls did not respond. The humans had already locked him out of his own systems. A human Marine, her armor scarred from weapons fire, approached Cross. She removed her helmet, revealing a young woman with determined eyes. General Cross, she said, you are under arrest for crimes against sapient life. You will stand trial. Resist and you will be judged here and now. Choose. Cross chose to fight. He was massive, strong, and trained in combat. The Marine was a fraction of his size. He lunged at her with speed that should have been overwhelming. She moved faster. Her armor enhanced her strength and speed beyond what seemed possible. She dodged his attack and struck once precisely at a nerve cluster that paralyzed his lower body. Cross fell, unable to move. Poor choice, the Marine said. She signaled her team. They secured Cross and moved to the next target. Across Tarn space, the same scene repeated. Human forces appeared inside secured facilities. They extracted the guilty with surgical precision. They ignored the military forces positioned near civilians. They did not need to fight those ships. They simply removed the leadership and let the military collapse on its own. Within 12 hours, the entire Tarn High Command was in human custody. Their fleet, leaderless and confused, received a message from Admiral Okonkwo. Your leaders are captured. You have two choices. Stand down and you will be treated as soldiers who followed orders. Continue to fight and you will be treated as accomplices to your leaders' crimes. You have 1 hour. The Tarn fleet stood down. Every ship. They had trained to fight humans in space combat. They had not trained for an enemy who simply bypassed the battle entirely and took their leaders. The trials were held on a neutral station, broadcast across the galaxy. The evidence was overwhelming. Videos of weapons tests on living populations, records of approved bioweapon releases, communications between Tarn leaders discussing acceptable casualty numbers for their experiments. General Cross tried to claim he was following orders from civilian leadership. The humans presented evidence that he had requested approval for the tests, not been ordered to conduct them. He tried to claim the tests were necessary for security. The humans showed that the tests had no scientific value, only cruelty. He was found guilty and executed. 40 other Tarn leaders joined him, but then the humans did something unexpected. They offered the Tarn people a choice. They could reform their government, remove the military from civilian control, submit to inspections, join a new organization that actually enforced laws, or they could remain isolated. No trade, no contact, left alone to rebuild on their own. The Tarn people chose reform. They were tired of being ruled by generals who sacrificed civilians for research. They wanted something better. 2 species remained on the list. Both surrendered before the humans came for them. They had seen the Krev destroyed, the consortium dismantled, and the Tarn broken. They understood that resistance was futile, that humanity would find them. That justice was coming. The last trials were held. The last criminals were judged. And then humanity did something that shocked the galaxy even more than their military might. They stopped. Admiral Rodriguez addressed the Galactic Council. He returned to the chamber where Ambassador Chen had walked out a year earlier. We have completed our list, he said. 12 species committed crimes that the Council ignored. 9 have been held accountable. 3 reformed before we arrived. Justice has been served. He paused, looking around the chamber, at the species who had been paralyzed by fear for the past year, at the ones who had cheered humanity's withdrawal, at the few who had supported Earth all along. We did not do this because we enjoy violence, Rodriguez continued. We did it because someone had to. Because laws without enforcement are meaningless. Because the strong cannot be allowed to prey on the weak without consequence. The council chamber was silent. They waited for the ultimatum, for humanity to demand control, to impose their will on the entire galaxy. Instead, Rodriguez said something else. Earth will not rejoin the Galactic Council. We have seen how this organization works. How it talks while civilizations die. How it debates while atrocities happen. We want no part of it, he held up a datapad. Instead, we are forming something new. The Human Accord. An organization based on a simple principle. Laws that are not enforced are not laws. Species who commit crimes will face justice. No debate, no committees, no endless procedures. He looked directly at the council elder. Any species can join the Accord. Any species can seek our protection. But there are conditions. You must enforce your own laws. You must protect the weak. You must submit to inspections to verify compliance. And if you commit crimes, you will face the same justice we delivered to the Krev. The chamber erupted in voices. Some species were outraged. Others were terrified. Many were intrigued. Ambassador Chen stood beside Rodriguez. She was no longer ambassador to the council. She was now the first director of the Human Accord. She spoke into the chaos. The choice is yours. Council membership offers diplomatic protection and slow justice. Accord membership offers human protection and swift justice. Choose what works for you. But understand this, the days of unpunished crimes are over. Whether you join us or not, humanity will be watching. Over the next year, the galaxy reorganized itself. Some species remained with the Council, believing in the traditional diplomatic approach. Others joined the Accord, wanting the security of enforced laws. Many species joined both. They kept their Council membership for trade and cultural exchange, but sought Accord protection for security. The Council shrank to half its size. The species that remained were the ones who wanted to maintain the old ways, the endless debates, the careful diplomacy. They were comfortable with the system where nothing really changed. The Accord grew quickly. Within a year, over 1,000 species had joined. They submitted to human inspections. They reformed their governments. They enforced their laws. And when they needed help, human forces arrived to assist. There were challenges. Some species chafed under the strict rules. Some tried to cheat the inspections. Each time, humanity responded firmly but fairly. Follow the rules and you had allies. Break the rules and you faced consequences.